Hey guys, Troy Casey, certified health nut. In an effort to bring you more fun, freedom, and phenomenon, I'm bringing you today Dr. Jeff from Rhythmia in Costa Rica. I've got a background working with ayahuasca for the past 20 years, and I started working in the Amazon rainforest with the Shipibo Indians. And Jerry and Dr. Jeff built Rhythmia about 10 years ago after Jerry, Dr. Jeff's partner here, well, you'll tell the story, but the story is pretty fascinating. Um, Welcome to the show, Dr. Jeff.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to tell you a little bit about what we're doing down here in Costa Rica.
Yeah, so I went down to Rhythmia, 4 nights of ayahuasca, bookended with 2 nights of breathwork. I was very impressed. 5-star accommodations, organic food, great tutelage. My friend and mentor, Dr. Michael Beckwith, Reverend Michael Beckwith, he built some of the curriculum that was down there at the time when I was there, and I had a great time. It was a very powerful experience. 4 nights of ayahuasca and working with uh, Taito Juanito's lineage from Colombia and with the Yahe medicine. And
Hmm.
Yahe is very similar to the Shipibo medicine, very deep, dark brews, lots of ayahuasca. And so, and I say that because the Santi Daime and some of the other shamans, even in the Amazon, they use all sorts of different plants and formulations of it. And I just know that the Shipibo use a very deep, dark brew of ayahuasca, with the chacruna, keeping it very simple. And so, so I had a great experience. The music was incredible. The support that you guys had down there was amazing. And so I'd like to turn it back a little bit, Dr. Jeff, and talk about your background in Los Angeles first, and then how you met Jerry, and and then the impetus for opening Rhythmia, et cetera, and then what you guys are up to now.
Sounds great. So thanks, Troy, for the great intro. I'm a trained doctorate level psychologist from Los Angeles, and I started off my career studying public health at UCLA, where I got my master's degree. And I went into healthcare for a very simple reason. It was to change what was going on and just to shake up the system a bit. But when I was starting school, I didn't know really what that would look like. I didn't really have a map for how I would do that. I just knew that what I was experiencing in the world and just my own upbringing in Los Angeles, there was a lot of people that weren't getting healthcare appropriately. And the messages, sometimes from a Western medical model, are not always great. And I just saw a lot of people on meds, and I saw a lot of people unhappy and not really becoming healthy as people. And so, what I did is when I went into my public health, I studied medical anthropology as an undergrad. And that was really interesting because that was the cultural side of healthcare. And I focused on Latin American cultures and shamanic work and curanderos, and mostly in South America. And that really opened my eyes as an undergrad to see that there was these other ways of looking at health and also what wellness is. And so when I got into my public health degree, I immediately started looking at, I found myself trending towards reproductive health because women's health, we know, is very interesting because it's not just only about healthcare, but it's about politics and socio-cultural things and emotion. And there's all this wealth of just this beauty that's in women's healthcare. And so I found myself leaning towards that. And I started doing work within the UCLA OB GYN department. And I thought, hey, you know what? I'm gonna become an OB/GYN because I'm managing these clinics here. And I became the director of a couple of the clinics in Westwood. And I said, hey, I need to get my doctorate or my medical degree to really do this the right way. So I went back to UCLA after having finished my master's and took all the sciences and then applied to medical school. And then I got in to the UCLA Charles Drew program, which was 2 years in MLK Hospital in Watts, and then 2 years in Westwood. And then a revelation hit me, and it hit me from a lot of the OB GYNs that I was managing. And what they told me was, they said, "Hey, congratulations, Jeff. I know it's hard to get into this school. And I know you worked really hard for the last several years to do this." They said, "But if you're smart, you'll get out of the field now while you can." I was kind of floored because I was in my mid-20s and I'd worked really hard and I'd gotten into school. I'm like, "What do you mean exactly?" And they said, "We're trapped here. We have, some of them $500,000 in student debt, and we're tied by liability. And I would love to offer these alternative things for my patients to do to improve themselves, but I can't offer any of the things that I think are appropriate. I have to follow the AMA strict guidelines on what's going to happen for this patient." And I had noticed myself with the patient population we were working with in these clinics that there was a lot of women that were showing up with trauma. And I'm thinking, wow, like this is a mental health issue right here in this OBGYN clinic, but it wasn't getting addressed. It wasn't the quote unquote environment for it. So all we would do is give these women referrals to go see a psychiatrist, and then that would be it. And some of the women that we followed up with, because they would be regular patients of ours, they told us how it went. And they said, what'd you do? What'd you say to the psychiatrist? Like, "Well, he just gave me, Wellbutrin." Or he just gave me some Xanax, or he or she, so it just, I was really becoming frustrated and disillusioned with the whole system that I was in. And I thought, okay, there's got to be a better way to approach healthcare. And so I decided not to go to medical school. I decided instead to pursue a doctorate in psychology. And then I did that. So I got into a doctorate program. I studied, I did internships. And then I found that the addiction world was another area that was completely dominated by the medical model and the disease model. And I was like, wow, like if someone has an addiction, they're like, all of a sudden, they're just like in this pigeonhole. I have character flaws. I'm defective. I have a disease. All this kind of like really negative way of thinking. And I don't want to badmouth any program or 12-step thing, because my grandpa got sober off of the 12 steps. So I'm very grateful for the 12 steps. But something that was originated in in the 40s, 1940s, I think has evolved. Hopefully, there's new protocols that we can use, right, to help people that have addictions. So I ended up managing a drug and alcohol rehab in Malibu called Passages. I'm sure you've heard of that. And that was a really cool place because it was a non-12 step program. It looked at spirituality. It looked at the whole body. It looked at acupuncture, Eastern medicines. It looked at diet. It looked at all these different cool things that was really helping the clients be effective and become sober and be happy and actually have purpose. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me working at Passages, and I became the administrative director for about 8 years there. And that's where I met Jerry. And Jerry Powell came in as a client, and he was the kind of traditional, typical sort of guy who, made millions of dollars in some crazy company and sold it, and then started partying, and then became burned out and just was very unhappy with his life and with himself. And he said, to save my marriage, to save my family, to save my life, I should probably go to a rehab. So he checked in, and he didn't have, a whole lot of experience about like what it meant to be in rehab. He knew that he wanted to get rid of his Demerol addiction, which was an IV drug that you use in surgery. He had become addicted to that. It's a really strong opiate. So he was able to really nail that when he was at Passages. He got rid of that. But he didn't believe that he went to Passages for alcohol or cocaine or his own behavior. So when he got out, he continued to live this sort of crazy lifestyle, Demerol free, but still addicted. And that's when I put Jerry in my practice for 5 years, and I worked with him individually as best I could. And he's a very strong personality, and he doesn't follow like the healing modality direction very well, I guess is a nice way to say it. And so he ended up becoming suicidal again, which he had a history of attempts and a lot of ideation. And he was just a very unhappy individual, And he heard from just a person that we both knew about a plant medicine in Costa Rica that would help him turn his life around, because other people that this lady that we knew that she had sent had flipped their life around, that had these crazy addictions and lifestyle things that were really rough, like kind of like Jerry. And I just thought at the moment, I thought, dude, just go do anything that will help you. Like, I didn't really understand what he was even going to do. It was kind of like it happened really fast. So Jerry came down to Costa Rica and had this wild experience with plant medicine, and it really, really opened his eyes. He found out about his trauma, and he had this life-changing experience. And so when he came back from that, he filled me in, and then he had me go down with him 2 weeks later. And that was in 2014. July of 2014 is when that happened. And so him and I came down here, and I was actually quite nervous. And I'd never had a psychedelic experience, nothing
And
like that. I was, yeah.
and to clarify, Jeff, that was Iboga, correct?
Correct. That was a medicine from, we call it a medicine. These plant medicines, we call them that way because they're medicines to the shamanic world and to us as well. And the shaman was from Gabon, Africa, which borders the Congo, and it's a part of their tradition, the Bwiti tribe. And he was the head shaman of the Bwiti tribe, and an incredible individual, very powerful, very deep. And the Iboga was just this incredible experience that really helps you see who you are deep down and do inner child work and heal all the things that, are holding you back. But that was the first medicine that we experienced. And so, Jerry and I thought, we should have a place that's safe and medically licensed and staffed by professionals like, nursing and doctors and things like that would be open-minded. And we should have a place where people could come to, because where Jerry and I participated in this Iboga was a really run-down, kind of sketchy place. It was a house up in the mountains. And so while the medicine was incredible, the shaman was incredible, it wasn't an environment that we thought many people would feel comfortable going to. So Jerry and I decided to hire the shaman and look for a resort that we could convert into a medical facility, and ask the Department of Health of Costa Rica, the Ministry of Health, to license us. So we looked around for about 6 months and found a place. And we're in the northern Pacific side of Costa Rica, about 2 hours south of Nicaragua border. And we bought this resort and we converted it into a very nice place of wellness. And it's a beautiful property, as you know, you've been here. But what we learned is that through our journeys with the Iboga, we would ask very specific questions, because you can get downloads from that particular, from most of the psychedelics, but really particularly with Iboga, you can get very clear direction if you ask certain questions. And so there's a way to do that the Bwiti shaman showed us. And we would ask, like, okay, well, how many people should we have do this at once? Or how often in a week should we do this? Or how long should the program be? And what was happening as we went through these journeys, we were finding that Iboga itself, we believe, was telling us this isn't going to work large scale, because it's a very intense medicine. It requires a 1-to-1 ratio, shaman to participant. And it's just kind of like not really practical for what we were trying to do. So one of our questions was, should we continue with Iboga in this modality that we're attempting to open? And the medicine came through and told us very clearly, you guys should use ayahuasca. And the reason for that is because it's native to this area, and you guys are connected to Latin America. We weren't in Africa, we were in Costa Rica. And it will be an easier process for you guys to get licensed. It will also be an easier process for you to administer this to larger groups of people, more than 5 or 6. Because in an Iboga journey, there's never more than, usually 10 is probably the ultimate max that I've ever seen. And, we have a 100-bed resort here. So we were thinking, like, this is going to be a zoo. It's going to be a circus if it was just Iboga. So after about 2 years of owning the property but not opening for guests, we learned about ayahuasca. We met a bunch of shamans from all different parts of the world, mostly from South America, some Central American. and we drank medicine with them. We sat with ayahuasca. We became knowledgeable in it in a way that, that we can learn about it and partner with really powerful shamans that helped us open up now Rhythmia and become medically licensed with the government. And we use the ayahuasca as a modality to help people. And as a medical facility, we can't make medical claims. That's an illegal thing to do. But if people look at, like, for example, our TripAdvisor, it's like crazy, amazing 5-star reviews of like what happened for people here. And our websites have testimonials. So it's this amazing experience. But what we're focused on here at Rhythmia is these 3 intentions that were very clearly given to us by our experience in this ayahuasca. And the first one is very clear, and we can get into these, I'm sure, but I want to give you a little bit of background. Like, that's kind of how this all started.
And so was the message from Iboga or from ayahuasca?
The message was from Iboga to use ayahuasca instead.
And what were the 3 clear directives or intentions?
So Jerry, when he went through his experience with Iboga, and then later with myself, also with the ayahuasca, we saw that there was this, like, sort of, it was almost like a common process that was happening for us and other people that we were working with as we went through this. And we saw that the first intention is, show me who I've become. And we believe that's based on a dissociative event that happens when we're little kids, usually between the ages of 2 and 7 years old, where there's this split and we feel that it's not safe to be ourselves and we have to show the world something else. Like, if I feel that my needs aren't getting met and I'm a 5-year-old, I start to morph and split off from my true me, and I start to show the world something that will get my needs met. Maybe I become a bully, or maybe I become really shy and quiet, or I become a perfect student, or I become a rebel, or whatever. And I see that when I do these other things that really aren't my true self, that my needs get met, I get noticed, I get attention. And then this dissociative split from childhood evolves over our lifetime. And pretty soon we're very disconnected from ourselves. And so the first intention is to show me who I've become. Like, maybe I've become this ruthless attorney on Wall Street, and that's not really me. Like, I like nature. I like to connect with my family. This other persona that helps me survive in the world, it's not my true me. And so that's the first thing that we teach people is, like, how do you got to acknowledge and see what you're showing the world that's not really you. And the second intention, after you figure that out, is merge back with your soul. So we believe that the human person is there's a duality, our physical self and our spiritual self. And people often can say your emotional self if they don't believe in the spiritual self. We believe that there's this duality. And so the true self is the spiritual self, or the emotional self, or the higher self, they often say. That's the true you. But your physical body has, taken on all these different behaviors, drugs and alcohol maybe, or bad thinking, or negativity, and just whatever, rat race. And what we want to do is we want to merge you after you've realized that this split has happened. We want to merge you back with the true you and connect and no longer be dissociated. As a psychologist, there's all these different disorders that I had to learn and train with about dissociative identity issues. And so it's like there's mild dissociation way up to very severe that's very, very psychiatric. So it's important to be connected to your true self. And so the second intention is merge me back with my soul at all costs. And the third one, the final one, is beautiful because that's where the healing is. And it's very simple, heal my heart. And that's where, if we've been through life, we've been through trauma. Everybody has trauma. Some people mild trauma, some people severe trauma. I grew up in a rough part of Los Angeles. I have a lot of trauma from a kid. And I was able to heal that trauma through my own connection with myself. And I was able to release the fear and the anger and the resentment and the confusion and all the stuff that I've just been holding in my body since I was a little boy. And once you release that kind of stuff, then you're at this very balanced place where you feel amazing and you're kind of like fresh and kind of new. And that's where you have to start using the tools that you learn. And we teach those here at Rhythmia for aftercare and a daily practice and things like that. Things that you, Troy, are very good at. Of course, the aftercare stuff is incredible that you teach, and that's where we kind of help people do that. So since we've opened in 2016, we've had 18,000 people come through these doors, and it's a week-long program, and we have people from all over the world, and it's been amazing. And I mean, I pinch myself just realizing like what is going on here. I mean, it's just a beautiful experience.
So it sounds like you've been able to witness some profound healing where in the United States, where we have mostly the medical establishment, and I get reports from people being maimed and more problems coming from that avenue. And so you've been able to witness a lot of healing, yes?
Absolutely. Every week we see this incredible healing journey for these guests. We can hold up to roughly 100 people here. And we've noticed that the larger the group, the higher the success rate on the exit surveys. And I think that's because when there's more people, there's more of this like synergistic energy of positivity that people are all working on. They really bond with each other. But we average in the 70s and in the 65, 80-ish. And it's just like this amazing experience. But yes, there's incredible healing that the guests have reported and that we get to witness every single week.
And so you're coming up on your 10-year anniversary. And so talk to us a little bit about the experience that you've had as a psychologist. I mean, your trajectory. I mean, this must have been probably more profound than the actual schooling you went to. Yes.
Absolutely. 100%. In schooling, when you do a doctorate program is usually 6 years. It can be longer depending on how long it takes you to do your dissertation or doctoral project. And so the first 2 years of school or a year and a half are just about book study and learning in the class. And then you go out and do internships and usually do 4 year-long internships. And that's where you learn because you're interfacing with guests or with patients and you're doing psychology, even though you're very green, you're learning how to do it. You have supervision. There's a lot of people there to help support you. But what I've learned in the ayahuasca university, as I like to call it, has been, and just the plant medicine university has been leaps and bounds, light years ahead of what I learned in school. And I think that school has been a very nice base for me to have a context of like, I can explain what's happening, I believe better, like in an ayahuasca session, to people that maybe have never done it before because I have the framework of the psychology sort of history with my education. But for myself, when you're getting your doctorate, you have to have 65 hours of individual psychotherapy that you receive because you don't want to have graduate students, that are totally bonkers and not able to, know who they are. So you have to go through therapy. But most of us, including me, just kind of coast through those hours and like we don't really go deep. This is a school requirement. We'll check the box and that's it. But ayahuasca has been, for me, it's been about 20 years of therapy very quickly, like in a couple of sessions. You really get to go deep and you get to go deep quickly. And that can be a bit daunting for some people, especially people that have really severe trauma. There has to be a safe environment to do the work. And you can't just go out in the jungle, without the right knowledge or without the right preparation and just expect to have this amazing thing happen. It does happen and it can, but we like to provide a ton of support for the people going through this process as well as preparation before they even get here. And that really, really helps them. And I'm sure when you went into Peru, for your first time, I would imagine you probably prepared a great deal with the dieta and other things that you were doing. And that's awesome. And that's very important to have these breakthroughs.
Yeah, the second time I returned to the Amazon and I was so enamored with my first experience, I wanted to go back. My ex-wife was pregnant at the time and she knew it was important to me. So she just cut me loose and she said, come right back. I've told the story before. My desire was to shoot a documentary and I went down there with some film equipment to film the initial aspect of it and then come home and get money for the rest and then come back. And my younger brother was on heroin at the time, and I called him, and he said, "Yeah, he was game for it, but not right at that point because he was sick." By the time I came home, he had overdosed, and so
Wow.
yeah, so that was
Brutal.
bitter, sweet experience. And my
Hmm.
son was born the month later, and I swear to God, he is the reincarnation of my brother.
Wow, wow, wow. It doesn't
It,
surprise me. Yeah, the connection. Wow.
yeah, yeah, and my ideas about marriage and family, and I was not in a relationship when I was down there. Quickly changed, especially seeing all those Latin American children down there and how beautiful that was. And I didn't have nieces and nephews, and I was never around children. So to go down there and see those little Indian kids in the jungle and so free and so innocent, I was like, wow. I just fell in love right away. Came home, um, was dating a couple women, and really did an earnest investigation. Are you ready to have children? Are you interested in getting married? And I found my ex-wife at the time, and we conceived pretty much immediately. And so he was born right after that, and she was pregnant. And so I said, "Look, I got to go down. I have a calling." And so I did 17 days of juice fasting, and it was great to
Hmm.
purify the vessel. At the time, I lost too much muscle, and it took me a while to build it back. So I have a lot of tools now that help me with that. But for me to do that much in-depth purification on my body helped me go much deeper the second time around. And so
Hmm.
and now I teach and I help people with integration because the ayahuasca is what 50% or a percentage of the real work, and most of the
Yes.
work is done when you get home. I know that you guys teach
Hmm.
that in your curriculum as well, and I think that's so important. The level of teaching that you guys have down there, I was blown away. It was very profound because it's one thing to go down to the jungle and work with the real shamans and be enchanted with all that, and that's great. And you guys have real shamans up there, but to have the facility and still be in the jungle, um, because being in the Amazon rainforest, I mean, there's mosquitoes, and you're
Yeah.
not top of the food chain, right? There's
Yeah.
anacondas and piranhas and all sorts of interesting stuff down there, and
Yeah.
so my experience at Rhythmia was extremely powerful for that exact reason, the creature comforts. And I know that the Western mind wants to know, right? That's the
Hmm.
psychology component of that. So I think that's very important uh, because I think we're searching for answers, and it's got to kind of make reasonable sense. And
Yeah.
so the service that you guys provide is very profound. Jeff, maybe you could talk a little bit about, what you're mainly seeing down there. Is it addiction? Is it childhood trauma? Is it the way of the world and people are losing their shit? Like what is the trend that you're seeing as far as people coming down there getting healing?
The number one issue that we see is trauma. That's the number one issue. And that can be from military vets with PTS, or it can be from people from childhood had sexual trauma or abuse that they've suffered as kids. That's our number one thing. And I believe that ayahuasca is amazing at healing that. A close second would be depression. So there's a lot of people that have met criteria for depression, been on meds for a long time, been in therapy. They've kind of reached a plateau and they're looking for something different. And ayahuasca is the answer. And so I would say trauma and depression are like really close first, second. And then third would be anxiety, a lot of anxiety disorders. And that it has to do a lot to do with, underlying issues like maybe not being happy in their job or not happy in their life. And what we see a lot too is people bring their spouse or partners with them. Like this week, we have 16 couples that are here, and that's incredible. And sometimes it's okay to not bring your partner, but just come alone, and then maybe your partner comes another time. So we've seen all of that, work, and just depends on the couple and the people. But I think like people that have hit a certain wall whether that's empty nest syndrome. And now they're like, well, now what do I do? Like my whole life has been my kids and now they're all in college and gone or married. So we have a lot of people like that too. And we also have people that are at a crossroads in their career and they're thinking like, okay, I've made my money or I've done what I need to do with this career. I've been in it for 30 years, but I feel I'm called to something else. I don't know what to do about that. How does that look? And so there's a lot of people with that because we have other intentions. We'll teach people as well about like making life choices and decisions. So that's kind of the main thing. I would say trauma is a big one for us.
And are you working? I mean, obviously, the subsequent self medication element is always there. So, are you working with addiction as well?
Addiction is an issue with us, but we don't, because ayahuasca is what we call a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. The vine component of ayahuasca is an MAOI. So that contraindicates with a lot of substances in the Western medical model that are often prescribed or people are using. So, for example, someone who has an addiction, their neurochemistry is obviously unbalanced and they're surging dopamine and norepinephrine and their cortisol levels are dropped and there's all this different sort of neurochemical stuff going on as well as possibly the substance is still in their body depending on what they're using. And so we have to have a certain amount of clean time or sober time prior to coming and drinking ayahuasca. And for most people, it's 15 days for most substances. There are some substances that are 30 days. Like, for example, if somebody is, a hardcore heroin addict, they've been a heroin addict for 10 years, they shoot every day, 15 days sober isn't going to really cut it for us. We're going to have to look at that person individually. And it might be much longer than that. It could be 90 days because we don't want to give people a healing modality this profound and then just send them back home to their triggering environments. We want them to have some really positive momentum of sobriety before they even come here. So we don't have people that are like actively in an addiction. We have people that usually have about a year of sobriety. We've had less, we've had people that have just 30 days off alcohol and we can work with that, and we're constantly monitoring them because we do have 4 medical doctors that work here as well as 9 registered nurses. We have paramedics that are there. And to be honest, everybody's pretty much playing dominoes because once you're medically cleared for this, it's very safe. And we have all these safety nets here based on our medical license is what I maintain with the government. There's all these checks and balances that we have to make sure everybody feels safe. So it is a safe place to do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, the level of high performance business that you guys have created is amazing. And so, so do you outsource for something like Ibogaine, or do you recommend a clinic in Costa Rica, prior to help people get off those chemical dependencies?
Yeah, like if somebody calls our intake phone room, which is in Los Angeles, and they need to get off opiates, for example, we'll refer them to some clinics in Mexico that we know that are really good. In Costa Rica, there isn't currently any legal plant medicine facilities other than us right now. Now there's rogue and clandestine things that happen all over the world all the time. But as far as like an official referral, we don't refer to anybody in Costa Rica, only other licensed places, such as a couple that we know of in Mexico.
Okay, great. And so, so what are you seeing next? I mean, first of all, you must have some pretty good fulfillment in your life, right? You've worked in, you're very well trained, UCLA, then you worked at Passages. And so, and now you've been on this project for almost 10 years. You've helped over 18,000 people. I mean, that's pretty profound success that you're experiencing it. And so, what's next? Where are you guys headed next?
Well, once we became established here with results that are really positive and also a reputation of being very compliant with all of our medical policies, we hope to expand into other receptive jurisdictions. So there's other countries that are courting us that want us to have, an arrhythmia in their area. And my job has evolved from, kind of managing every client who comes here, which I still do indirectly through my management team. But now my job is to expand and help us get licensed in other areas of the world. I would love for ayahuasca to eventually be 100% legal in the United States. We know that it is in some areas with Santo Daime and with other native lands with certain indigenous groups, but they're very restricted, and it can be amazing. Those groups, of course, we have a lot of friends in those groups, but to have it be a legitimate modality that can be used in the United States, I think would be an incredible achievement. I don't think the pharmaceutical industry is ready for that yet, or ever will be. But in the meantime, more open governments and more open countries that really see the need for this are areas that we're looking at right now.
And so, are you talking about other continents as well?
Yes, other continents, other countries, other areas. We're constantly being asked about different. I speak around the world all about what we're doing, and I go and I meet with different governments and different people. And the problem with ayahuasca in particular is that part of the Geneva Conventions of the early 1970s have listed, DMT as a Schedule One substance, and so that means that it's banned in most of the world, and it's a synthetic DMT that they're concerned about, which is not what ayahuasca is. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about ayahuasca and DMT and like the uses for it, but we know that things that really help and heal people, we know in this world, unfortunately, that healthcare is a business for most of the world, and anything that's going to like help people actually heal, we know faces a lot of obstacles. So to say the least, so that's kind of what we fight against in a way. Is also just lack of knowledge, politics, and just people not understanding like really what this is. So my job focus is to expand awareness and speak to it in a way that hopefully that makes sense clinically, and that people can really feel safe and comfortable, because we have a single mom coming from the Upper East Side who, like a CEO, she's not necessarily going to venture into the Amazon to do this. Like we believe that she would come to Rhythmia because, like you said earlier, have all the comforts of what's going on here. You have your beautiful room, and you have a spa. I mean, amazing food. It's just this great property. We've bought a hotel and converted it. So I just think like the world is getting ready for this. We're close. The other psychedelics that are becoming more accepted is helping pave the way for this. But the difference, I believe, in most of the psychedelics like psilocybin, MDMA, other ones that are out there that are kind of going up and down with their acceptance, those are very, very safe, very, very safe for most everyone. Ayahuasca is different because it does have quite a few contraindications. And that's why I think people are very leery about it. Because if someone's bipolar one, which is mostly manic and occasionally depressed, ayahuasca is not recommended for that person. Like we don't allow bipolar one people to come here. And that's because it can throw you into a manic episode. So we know how to control for all this stuff and how to ask about it and make sure people are safe. But I think there's a lot of hesitation in the world about ayahuasca just because of the lack of understanding about it.
That makes very intelligent sense. Uh, so, have you guys interfaced with RFK and the Maha team at all? Because I know he's very interested in working with psychedelics.
Well, we have an amazing board of directors, and one of our board members is Kelly Slater, the 11-time pro champion surfer, and so Kelly and RFK are buddies, and so RFK is aware of what we're doing. He's aware of us. We haven't had any official interaction with him. We hope to, and we're looking forward to hopefully setting that up in the future. He's been very busy lately. So that's something that I think it's the right environment, because we know RFK is pro psychedelics. He's pro health in a way that you teach, and it's just we're really excited about this shift that's happening globally right now for psychedelics in general.
I am too. Yeah, I know that there's even more with the veterans, everybody that's following veterans that wants to help with PTSD. And, it's atrocious what we actually do with our veterans and many of the homeless in Los Angeles. I think there was 4,000 Iraqi veterans when I was living on that beach years ago. And most of them, they self-medicate with alcohol and drugs because that's what's readily available.
Hmm.
And so, what would you say to someone that is, thinking that, oh, this is just another drug experience. This is a party drug, or these are psychedelics, and it's not really, it's not true allopathic Rockefeller medicine.
Yeah, I love that example. Well, what I've had that question asked of me quite a bit by people, and the way I explain it is this: DMT, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca, is naturally already in our bodies. It's already in most living things. Most mammals have a high level of DMT in them. Plants do, obviously. And what is DMT exactly? Well, nobody really knows. But what we do know about DMT is that it's released when we're born. I have a 1 year old. She's got a lot of DMT still floating in her body. And then when you die, DMT is released into the bloodstream. And then when you have lucid dreams, DMT is released. And I'm talking about lucid dreams, meaning like dreams that seem to be meaningful or, messages coming through dreams. Those are the dreams that have high DMT content. So DMT is about a connection. It's about having a connection with yourself and your environment and other people and nature and godliness in what you believe in that arena. So when you take DMT, a little extra DMT from a plant like we serve at Rhythmia into your body, what you're doing, and I like to use the example, it's called priming the pump, because a lot of us in a Western model, we've shut down, with our pineal gland, right? We've shut it down with calcium deposits and fluoride and all kinds of stuff that happens in the body, and we're not in tune with our spiritual self very well. So a lot of these things have sort of like, in a way you can think about it, is they've kind of dried up. And the way to release them has been sort of stunted in a Western model of just living, environmental conditions, ways of thinking, et cetera, food, et cetera. So what happens is when you take extra DMT into your body, you prime the pump. So you give a dry pump a little bit of water in the fields out in the farming lands, and that water that you add will start to create the water to pump. And all of a sudden you have a well full of water pumping. So that's what the analogy is with ayahuasca, with DMT, is that it starts to help your natural DMT flow. And so I always like to tell people this too, the set and setting, the mindfulness, the intentions behind it, and the meditation involved in the process is why this works. So you can't, like in a party, you can't just take it and say, hey, I'm partying with ayahuasca. I mean, I'm sure people have done that before. I wouldn't recommend that. It's not going to be very, very enjoyable. But when you're in an environment that's a sacred environment, that's being spiritually protected by the shamans who come from this lineage and this culture of this medicine, which is 5,000 years plus old. And then you have the Icaros, and which are the chants and the prayers that the shamans are singing and chanting. And then you have the intention behind the medicine itself, the ayahuasca, that the shamans, how they made it, the environment they made it in, the mood they were in, what they're making it for. We have a very direct line to our shamans that make this, and it's a beautiful lineage that we work with. And then the individual has to focus on three things: mindfulness, my intention, and sitting in meditation while I have this process work. And that's why ayahuasca is very distinct and separate from party drugs or club drugs or other just experiences of like, kind of nonsensical stuff that's just not really sacred or important. There are people that have come to Rhythmia that didn't have a really serious focus, but they quickly develop one as soon as they learn about what this is and they see how we're serving this and that we're very serious about it and that the other guests are also very serious. So if somebody's here to party, they're not going to really fit in too well,
Yeah. What do you say about the breath work? So you couple this with 2 days of breath work on both ends of it. And so, and breath work is known to activate the DMT as well. And so, can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So what we love about breath work, and when guests arrive on a Saturday or a Sunday, those 2 nights we have breath work. So we kind of get the ball rolling for the people. And the beauty of breath work is you can control it yourself. You're just doing it yourself. You learn the techniques and you can use it to practice yourself. And what we're finding in these breath work experiences, again, at the end of the week, as you know, Friday night we have one too, and then again Saturday, Sunday. And so, like you said, it bookends the experience of the week. And what we're noticing is a lot of people achieve those three intentions I mentioned in the breath work. So it's not necessarily just in the ayahuasca sessions that all these breakthroughs happen. There's just as many breakthroughs happening in the breath work. And we find that, we want to give people tools to use at home so they can keep the momentum going. And the breath work is an incredible tool that they can just use and learn and take with them. Whereas ayahuasca is obviously, it's not something you can do anywhere randomly at your house. So, I mean, I guess you could, but it's not, it's not going to go very well. So the breath work has been a very important part of our practice. And it's something that it really anchors the guests because they really feel empowered. Because a lot of our guests, because of the trauma they've been through, they feel that they're not empowered or sovereign as individuals. The breath work really helps them get that groundedness. So it's a very important part of what we do, and I can't say enough about it, because it's just a great modality.
Can you talk a little bit about the classes that you have there? I know Reverend Michael Beckwith had some of his curriculum down there, so you're teaching very fundamental uh, principles, spiritual elements, and so can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So Michael Beckwith, he's the head of the Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, and they have services on Wednesdays and also Sundays. And you can go online for Agape Spiritual Center and watch it live online. And what Michael Beckwith does, he's built a specific curriculum for Rhythmia, and it's called The Answer Is You. And it's 4 classes throughout the week. They're run by Agape practitioners, and they teach for 1.5 to 2 hours this way to approach your life. There's journaling, there's workbooks you get. It's very proactive, and it's kind of our anchor modality that we have in the classes. So that's beautiful that we have Reverend Beckwith with us doing that. And then we have every day after the ayahuasca sessions in the afternoon, we have a plant integration class, and that's for people that might feel a bit overwhelmed or confused or uncertain about what just happened, that we bring context to it and we answer questions. We go over what to expect the next night and how to prepare and how to just kind of process and integrate their experience. So that happens every night or every afternoon post ceremony. So that's really good. We also have a bunch of classes Monday, which is the first day of the program. People got here on Saturday or Sunday. So Monday morning, first thing, 9:30 a.m., we're in the classroom and we're talking about how to set the intentions, the history of Rhythmia, how we got here, how Jerry had his own breakthroughs with the plant medicine, how I got involved and tried to help him feel supported in my own experience. And then we give people a framework that they can rely on and use. And we give people journals, and we encourage them to journal and to write down their experiences. And we have these big, really nice workbooks they get. And then every morning we have yoga, and then we have a meditation class on Wednesday afternoons. And then we have a closing group on Saturday that kind of bookends the lectures. So occasionally we also have guest speakers, like the Reverend Beckwith will come down twice a year, and he'll teach on Monday, Wednesday, his curriculum. And so that always sells out real quick. We've had a lot of amazing guest speakers over the years come here and train and teach their curriculum. So we have there's classwork, and there's just people are busy, they're busy while they're here.
Well, busy and grounded. When I went to the Amazon, there wasn't that much of a service there. However, my mentor down there, he would talk forever and he would lay a lot of these principles out. But you guys have leveraged it and really put a powerful curriculum. I found it very grounding, very informative, very useful, very healing for myself, who had a lot of experience already. And so that's great. So what's the future hold? What's next for Rhythmia?
Well, it's exciting for us right now because we've been able to build a brand that is world renowned and recognizable. And we've been able to advocate for this substance and this plant medicine that is just a beautiful thing. And we've been able to, really collect a lot of data on these outcome measures that we're studying. And I'm in the process of, eventually publishing a lot of stuff. I've published one article. It was kind of an introductory article on Rhythmia in a peer-reviewed journal, but we're going to start having much more scientifically peer-reviewed studies that will come out soon. So that's important to shift the way the world views ayahuasca, and at
Jeff,
least in the
what do you,
scientific world.
yeah, that's awesome. What are you seeing as a trend with this data right now?
Well, what we're seeing is that people that have what are called personality disorders, uh, and there's 10 personality disorders that psychologists and psychiatrists will use as diagnostic criteria for to help their patients. And I don't like personally labeling somebody with a personality disorder. It's kind of like calling somebody an addict for the rest of their life. It's not really productive. But when someone has a personality disorder, they're really struggling because they're living from an ego-syntonic position, which means they can't see the world from anyone else's view but their own. And we want people to get to an ego dystonic position, which means that, like, okay, I have my view and you have your view and we can coexist, and your view is different than mine. And what I do will impact you differently. And so that's a more evolved way of existing. And so personality disorders tend to have all that in common. And so it hinders people because they view the world like in one sort of way, and it's not functioning very well for them. So what we're noticing in the data is that personality disorders, the criteria that they have to meet to be diagnosed with one, are diminishing and going away. And people are healing from these so-called personality disorders because in the Western model, they believe that they're not treatable. I mean, they're treatable, but they're not curable. You can't get past it. If someone is borderline personality disorder, that's just who they are. They'll always be that way. They might outgrow traits of it in their 40s and 50s, but it's just the way they operate. So we don't believe that. We believe that if you can become ego dystonic through the process of the plant medicine, and the data that we're showing proves this, you can get past these things. So that, for me as a psychologist, is a very exciting thing. And anybody that's watching this that has a mental health background of schooling will really understand that that's a huge deal, because you don't want to be labeled something and that's just who you are. We'd like to get it to where you can actually heal it and move past that.
Well, I was homeless as a youth, and I did some work at Covenant House in Los Angeles, which is
Very familiar with that.
yeah, runaway home, and I went to a meeting as a volunteer um, with the doctors there, and one of the alarming things that I saw right away was that nobody was healthy in the room, and then they were talking about these children, and it was more objectifying it, and then giving them some type of clinical label. And I was very young in my development at the time. I was early 30s maybe, and I didn't understand it that much, but I realized, these children are more dynamic than just something that you're going to peg them. And they were talking about bipolar disorder, and I'm not sure this would have been almost 30 years ago. So I'm not sure if that's when bipolar was, just coming into um, psychiatric reality or nomenclature, but they were labeling them, and I thought, well, everyone has bad and good days. Obviously, if you're out of balance, it can get much worse, and if it stays that way or exacerbated by drugs and alcohol, it can get much worse. But I think we all have ups and downs inside of our lives, and just the fact that they were stamping these kids, labeling them as this, and then getting them on meds, and like that was it, and it was coming
Hmm.
from people that didn't have a high measure of health within themselves. And I was like, wow, this seems like a dead end road.
Yes,
So, and
absolutely.
now
Well, sorry, go ahead, Troy.
I see it in the world today. I mean, if you go
Yeah.
down the medical route, and not that there's not some use for that sometimes, of course there is, but we're handing out psych meds like candy right now to children. And we're
Yes.
putting them in boxes with cell phone towers on top of their schoolrooms and Wi-Fi everywhere and feeding them things that are not food. Don't even call it junk food. It's not even food. It's
Yes.
pure poison. And we're
Correct.
wondering why, people are losing their cookies in school and fluorescent lights, right?
That's right.
All this stuff is
Absolutely.
starting
All
to
that
come
stuff.
out now.
Well, what I've noticed is like when I was in Los Angeles working at Los Encinas Psychiatric Hospital in Pasadena, where I did my postdoc hours and rotations, I learned there more than anywhere that there's a liability issue for the practitioners. So aside from, it sounds like those practitioners you dealt with were like very unhealthy, probably overweight, probably chain smoking and drinking on the weekends. Aside from those things, what happens is, I believe that healthcare people go into the field with like the right intentions and
Yeah.
they have a good heart. But then when they get in there and then they become licensed and then they start to work in the field, they're like, uh-oh, if I don't prescribe the recommended regimen from the AMA, then I'm liable if something goes wrong. And when I was working at the psych unit in Pasadena, the locked units, there was a lot of liability that everybody was always worried about. Because if you put somebody on a hold and you let them out too soon and they attempt suicide for a second time, then all of a sudden the clinical team is liable and there's legal stuff. And so in court, and I had to witness, luckily I never had to go to court for myself, but I would witness this, with my fellow clinicians. And what I saw was, if they were in the courtroom and the judge says, okay, did you prescribe the correct regimen? Did you have them go to the right groups? Did you put them in an IOP? Did you put them in all these things? And if they didn't, then they were liable. So out of fear, the clinical people will do what they're supposed to do, which is labeling the client quickly with the diagnosis, giving them the meds that are recommended, and then just putting them into, this dead end path that doesn't really lead to anywhere because the clinicians are just actually, to be honest, they're just scared of getting sued. And so it takes a real, assertive person who has a lot of drive and somebody that like, I don't know, it's just, there's not a lot of them, but they have to get in there and just be like, I don't care if I get sued. I'm going to do what's right for this patient. And then that's kind of what happened to me. I didn't get sued about it, but I just said, I can't continue on this path of recommending meds and doing medication management, which with most of my sessions were going over the people's meds because I worked collaboratively with psychiatrists and, they would prescribe and I would manage. And so it's like, there wasn't even therapy going on so much. And the therapy that was going on was like, it was very short, 10 minutes, because the rest of it's about how's the meds and what's your side effects. So it takes a lot of nerve to break out of that system and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to move to Costa Rica. I'm going to leave my practice. I'm going to leave my hospitals. I'm going to leave my rehabs and I'm going to do something different that I see works. It's a rare thing that people do that.
Well, speaking of that, my mentor in the Amazon, Scott Peterson, he was a psychologist and he was studying how to heal people. And then he had his own challenges. And he went down to the Amazon and he drank ayahuasca and he lived with the Shipipo for about 7 years and then opened up his center for exactly that reason. I think it's very challenging to do real healing inside of the medical system.
Yes.
And so I see that plain as day. All right, wrapping it up, Dr. Jeff, what's your big message to the world today?
Well, I think, if I talk a lot about empathy when I'm here at Rhythmia. And I notice that a lot of people that we work with here are empaths. And what I mean by that is that they remove themselves from an interaction with somebody And what they do is they take on that other person's vibe and then they hold it. And oftentimes that vibe they're holding for everybody is negative or destructive. And the empath is a healer, and they might not know they are, but they're taking on the world's energy, an environment's energy, a culture's energy, a person's energy, and they're just tired. And they feel like they want to isolate. They don't know what's going on. They're usually very successful people. Everyone loves them. They're the favorite of everybody, but they're burnt out. And so I believe that the way the world heals is that we get all of us as humans have the ability to be empathic, and we do take on the things we're around and we hold it. The goal, I believe, of life is to heal yourself, because we're all light workers and light warriors. All of us are in our own way. Heal yourself through these different modalities that are out there. And then once you've healed yourself, you can go out and heal the world in a way that makes sense to you. So that empathy can be used in a way that's really, really effective. Because just holding people's pain is like instead of teaching someone how to fish, you're just catching them fish. I'd rather teach people how to fish. So at Rhythmia, that's what we're doing. We're teaching you how to fish and how to take care of yourself and then take care of the world. That's my message.
I love it. That's my message.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate you coming on. And so where can people find more information?
So we're on the internet, of course, and you go Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. Rhythmia is spelled interesting. It's Rhythmia. We're also on Facebook. We're on Instagram. And we have a lot of podcasts out there. We've done a lot of interviews that are really cool. Like this one's going to be our number one, I believe, right now. And I just want to tell your audience that, Troy, you've been such an amazing advocate for not only wellness and health, but also Rhythmia. And you're a big part of the energy of our facility. And we have your book everywhere, and everybody loves you. And you're just such a very charismatic figure that I'm just grateful that we know you. And you're a blessing to our facility and to our guests.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. And I plan on being there very soon and having a retreat down there with all you guys. And thank you so much. Thank you. And give
Thank
my
you.
love to Jerry and the
I
rest of the
will.
staff down there. Everything that you do.
Yep.
The staff is amazing, guys. If you get the chance to go down there, not just Jeff and Jerry, but the whole staff, you have massive amounts of people. It's a huge resort. Very welcoming, very good and trained staff. My experience was amazing. I look forward to going back very soon. And so thanks again, Jeff. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Troy.